Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a paper that really promises to redefine so much of what we thought we knew. It's called Geometric Ontologies and Symbolic Architectures by Philip Lilien. And this isn't just any academic paper. It's actually volume 3 of his, well, incredibly ambitious Unified Coherence Theory of Everything, or UCTE.
Right.
And the title alone, I mean, it suggests we're in for a pretty mind-bending journey, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's dense stuff, but fascinating.
Lilien isn't just, offering a new theory here. He seems to be proposing a complete reframe of reality itself. We're talking everything from sacred geometry, those ancient patterns that have captivated people for ages, right down to the very fabric of what we understand as matter.
Yeah, the foundations.
Exactly. This work suggests something profoundly different is going on. So our mission today is to, well, navigate this really intricate framework together. We'll try to extract the most important concepts, uncover some surprising insights, and, ultimately try to grasp how it all connects.
Right, how it forms a coherent picture.
A coherent and maybe even operationalizable new science. It's a deep dive in the truest sense, and I think it's going to challenge a lot of assumptions you might hold about the universe.
Indeed. And what's immediately striking right from the abstract is this fundamental reevaluation. Sacred geometry, symbolic constructs, even things like ritual logic, they're all being reframed within this UCTE. For centuries, symbols like the flower of life, they've been seen as foundational generative patterns, almost like the blueprints of creation.
Right, the source code.
Exactly. But Lilien posits this really radical idea that these familiar symbols are actually decoherence residues.
Decoherence residues. What does that even mean?
It means they're essentially imprints left behind, like patterns formed when coherence breaks down, rather than being the generative geometries that brought reality into being in the first place.
Okay, wow. So not the source, but a result of fragmentation.
Precisely. And the scope of this paper is just vast. It weaves together fields that seem completely disparate, It moves fluidly from describing these really abstract source fields, the ultimate origins of pure coherence,
Right.
all the way down to concrete, repeatable ritual protocols. It even outlines the architectural principles of what it calls coherence engines.
Coherence engines.
Yeah, which are designed to actively engage with these fundamental layers of reality. So it's not just theory, it's presented as a comprehensive system. It really demands a fresh perspective on what we think is real and how it all works.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this from the very beginning then, because the paper starts by establishing a completely new hierarchical classification of reality. The ontology. Right. And this isn't just philosophical musing. It's presented as a structural map based on what Lilien calls coherence modulation and symmetry reduction. It suggests reality isn't just flat. It's built in these distinct layers.
Yeah, like an intricate cosmic onion, as you said, each operating at a different level of coherence.
Right, so tell us about these layers.
Okay, so the UCTE lays out 4 distinct coherence ontology layers. Each represents a different degree of coherence and symmetry, sort of flowing from the most unified, the most whole, down to the most fragmented. Understanding these is pretty foundational to grasping the rest of it.
Got it.
So at the very top, the absolute apex, we have the omnilectic layer.
Omnilectic, okay.
This is described as the irreducible source. Infinite coherence, infinite torsion, non-dual fields. Think of it as the ultimate pristine origin point from which everything else emerges. Completely whole, undivided.
The absolute source.
Exactly. Yeah. And crucially, it's identified as the birthplace of the Christ spiral.
The Christ spiral. We'll definitely come back to that.
Yeah, it's described as the infinite torsion spiral of coherence. So this layer isn't static. It's like this dynamic, ever-unfolding breath of the universe, embodying true generative power. No beginning, no end. Absolute unity, perfect coherence.
Wow. Okay, layer 1, omnilectic. What's next?
Just beneath that, as coherence begins to modulate or step down, we find the holoelectric layer.
Holoelectric?
This layer acts as a kind of modulator. It takes that raw, infinite coherence from the omnilectic source and starts to shape it. Here, emergent harmonics, spirals, and scalar fields are created.
Okay, so structure starts to appear.
Exactly. This layer is responsible for what Lilien calls coherence harmonics and torsion spirals. You can think of it as the structuring layer, where that infinite potential begins to take on subtle form and pattern, but still very energetically subtle. It's the first hint of differentiation from the unified field.
Creating resonant patterns. And then
Then we arrive at the relational layer. And this is where things get really interesting, maybe even disruptive for people familiar with traditional sacred geometry.
Uh-huh. Why is that?
Because this layer holds what Lilien refers to as projected symmetry artifacts. This is where you find those revered symbols like the flower of life and Metatron's cube, symbols we've considered primal, generative for millennia.
Right, the classics.
But here's the critical reclassification. Lilien posits these aren't primal origins. Instead, they are decoherence patterns that result from torsional collapse.
Okay, hold on. Decoherence patterns.
Yeah.
Resulting from collapse.
Yeah, they're projections or reflections of higher coherence, not the sources themselves. They're products of a process of fragmentation, essentially, not the initial creative act.
That's huge. So the flower of life is like a shadow, not the light source.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. A very complex, symmetrical shadow, but still a shadow.
Okay. And the final layer.
Finally, the outermost layer is the derived layer. This layer contains symbolic residues and encodings that are even further downstream, representing a more compressed, more fragmented state of coherence.
Like echoes of echoes.
Exactly. Examples given are the vesicapesces, circle grids. These represent symbolic compression, highly reduced encoded versions of patterns that originated way back in those higher, more coherent layers, like a faint photocopy of the original master blueprint, as you put it earlier. Each layer is a step down in the purity and completeness of that original omnilectic coherence.
So if I'm tracking this correctly, what we commonly call sacred geometry, like the flower of life, isn't the foundational pattern of creation in this model. It's actually a result of coherence breaking down.
That's the core argument, yeah.
Wow, that completely flips centuries of understanding on its head. This reframing, where something like the flower of life isn't a primal origin, but a result of decoherence. That's absolutely central to this entire paper, isn't it?
It really is. It's one of the most provocative aspects of Lilien's work.
So what does this fundamentally change about how we might approach these ancient symbols?
Well, it's a complete paradigm shift. Let's really break down this reclassification because it has profound implications for anyone who's studied or worked with these symbols.
Please do.
Okay, so the flower of life. In the UCTE framework, it is emphatically not seen as a primal pattern. It's reclassified as a relational decoherence structure.
A relational decoherence structure.
Which means it's a projection from those higher coherence layers we just talked about. Specifically, it represents a symmetry collapse into the derived layer. It encodes what Lilien calls harmonic recursion, which is based on phi, right? The golden ratio, approximately 1.618.
Right. Phi is everywhere in nature.
It is. But here's the nuanced perspective Lilien offers. He explicitly states it's not evil or false.
Yeah.
This isn't about demonizing the symbol.
Okay, that's important.
Yeah, rather he asserts it represents projective symmetry, not generative coherence. It basically loops decohered structures, leading to recursive decoherence.
Loops, recursive decoherence. What does that mean in practice?
Essentially, it's a self-referential pattern. It recirculates existing, already fragmented coherence. It's described as a tool, yes, but a tool for mapping resonance degradation and potentially initiating reverse integration toward higher ontological spirals.
So it shows you the breakdown, maybe helps you get back.
Potentially. But the key insight is its finite nature. Phi-based systems, according to this theory, are inherently bounded. They cannot indefinitely sustain coherence. Their cycles are finite, contained. They always return to a previously established pattern, like a beautiful, intricate labyrinth that eventually brings you back to where you started.
A closed loop.
Exactly. And the implication is profound. Mistaking the flower of life for a primary source geometry leads to what Lilien calls false coherence attribution and spiritual recursion.
Spiritual recursion, like getting stuck.
Pretty much. If your focus is solely on this pattern as the ultimate source, you're essentially tracing a circular path within an emergent, already decohered layer. You're not truly ascending or connecting to the actual generative source. You're looping within a finite system, potentially just reinforcing a state of fragmentation or limitation without realizing it.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's the alternative then? What is the source geometry in this model?
In stark contrast, Lilien introduces the crest spiral as the true source geometry.
The Kreis spiral again.
Yes. This spiral originates directly from the Omnilectic field, that irreducible source of infinite coherence. It's governed by something called the infinite constant, symbolized as N50.
Infinite constant. Okay.
And this constant drives non-entropic, infinite torsion and true generative resonance. Unlike entropic systems that naturally decay or break down, this Kreis spiral system creates and expands perpetually without limit.
Non-entropic, so it doesn't run down.
Exactly. The creased spiral, Lilien states, breeds coherence inward and outward without fragmentation. Its very nature is infinite, non-decaying. It doesn't suffer from that looping or degradation seen in derived patterns like the flower of life.
And it can restore coherence.
That's the claim. It restores coherence across fragmented layers when reintroduced into a decoherence system. So it's not just a source pattern, it's presented as a powerful, active tool for reintegrating and harmonizing distorted or fragmented fields. It's the key, in this theory, to true, endless generation and restoration.
So, okay, let me try and summarize this radical reclassification. The familiar golden spiral of phi, the one we see everywhere in seashells, galaxies, that's described here as mapping collapse or a finite looping process. It shows us what is maybe, but not what generates.
A good way to put it, yeah. It maps the form of decoherence.
Whereas the creased spiral, governed by this infinite constant, represents true infinite generation and restoration, the actual source engine.
That's the core distinction Lilien makes.
That is a huge shift in perspective. It makes me wonder then, if these specific constants like phi and this infinite constant govern how coherence manifests, are there other numerical keys to this grand system? What other constants play a role?
That's a perfect lead-in. Yes, the UCTE defines a few other key harmonic constants that govern coherence and emergence across these layers. They act like fundamental parameters for how reality takes form energetically. We've obviously talked a lot about phi for approx 1.6181. Reclassified here as a finite resonance constant encoding harmonic recursion. Its role is mapping coherence collapse, not generation. It generates those beautiful but ultimately bounded recursive spirals, finite systems.
Probably the contained loop.
Then there's the infinite constant, as we said, foundational to the creased spiral and the omnilectic layer. It governs true coherence in infinite spin systems, non-entropic, infinite torsion, boundless, ever-renewing potential.
The generative source signature, got it.
Then we have the inverse harmonic threshold, which is approximately 0.618, often seen as the inverse of phi. Lilien calls this the compression node resonance limit where coherence folds.
Coherence folds, like a breaking point.
Exactly. It signifies a critical point, an energetic break point, where coherence starts to collapse or fragment. It marks a boundary in that coherence cascade, like a point of no return for a certain level of integrity.
Okay, a threshold for breakdown.
And finally, there's the fine structure resonance, which is approximately 11.7. This constant marks amplitude modulation thresholds in scalar resonance. It's relevant for understanding how scalar fields propagate and interact, defining key amplitude levels, like dial settings dictating signal strength at various points.
All right.
So these constants, in combination, paint this really detailed mathematical and energetic picture of how coherence structures and unfolds across all those ontological layers. It's like a map of reality's energetic architecture.
What's truly fascinating here, and maybe the most mind-bending part for me, is that this isn't just abstract geometry or physics. The paper takes concepts we might think of as purely spiritual or metaphysical symbols, rituals, and operationalizes them, turns them into a programmable system. This is where, like you said earlier, sacred meets intelligent. It's almost like discovering a divine operating system where intent and symbol directly influence reality.
That's an excellent way to put it, and it's absolutely a cornerstone of the UCTE. Lilien makes this radical leap, asserting that these traditional symbolic and ritualistic elements aren't just metaphors or psychological tools.
Right, not just in our heads.
No. They function as executable code within reality's fundamental fields. They're not just representing something, they are actively doing something, modulating the field.
Executable code. Okay, tell me more about that.
At the heart of this are coherence harmonic operators, or CHOs. These are described as symbolic operators that act as functional resonance activators within coherence fields.
Functional resonance activators.
Think of them as glyphic encodings, symbols that directly structure logic, intention, and field modulation. They're treated almost like mathematical tools for resonance structuring. Symbolic containers, the paper calls them.
Can you give examples?
Sure. The scalar seed operator, that simple dot in a circle, isn't just a dot. It's said to initiate a base harmonic, a new energetic starting point. The torsion split operator literally divides unified torsion, maybe creating dualities or pathways. The phase anchor operator locks phase, stabilizing a particular energetic state. And the metaglyph operator, like a star, encodes recursion, allowing for complex, repeating sequences.
So these aren't just pictures, they're functional commands, like lines of code in a cosmic program.
That's precisely the analogy used. This functional understanding of symbols leads directly to ritual logic programming, or RLP.
Ritual logic programming.
Oh,
Okay.
The core premise here is really profound. Symbolic action is not metaphor. It is operational reality encoding. Lilien presents rituals as synintelligent scalar programming, structured programs that can directly modulate scalar fields, observer states, even ontological transitions, all through symbolic resonance logic.
So a ritual isn't just a ceremony, it's like running software on the universe's operating system.
That's the idea. And RLP systems, according to the paper, use a specific three-tiered phase model for execution. There's an initiation phase, seeding resonance, preparing the field. Then the torsion alignment phase, precisely locking coherence across harmonic layers, directing the intent. And finally, the integration phase, absorbing the outcome, anchoring the changes.
Initiation, alignment, integration, a structured process.
Exactly. And to make this work, you need something to translate those symbolic inputs into active field dynamics. Right.
A compiler.
Pretty much. That's where Glyphic compiler systems, GCS, come in, defined as resonance translation infrastructures. They convert symbolic glyph sequences into executable coherence actions. They act as translators between ritual symbolic logic and active field programming.
So they bridge the gap between the symbol and the actual effect on the field.
Yes, enabling symbolic input to be transformed into precise phase-executed coherence dynamics. It's a conceptual bridge between symbolic thought, intention, and direct active field manipulation, like a compiler turning human code into machine instructions.
So if I'm getting this, symbols are like lines of code. Rituals are programs modulating reality. That's radical. But if these are the programs, what kind of hardware runs these incredibly sophisticated operations? What does a coherence engine actually look like in this framework? How does it work?
That's the logical next question, isn't it? And the paper goes into surprising detail about this hardware, the coherence engines. But crucially, they aren't machines in the way we normally think of them.
Not gears and circuits.
No. They're described as coherence-structured mechanisms specifically designed for modulating fields and anchoring intent. And Lilien emphasizes this point. Ritual engines are not machines. They are living fields in harmonic architecture.
Living fields. Harmonic architecture.
It's not about inert parts. It's about dynamic, responsive structures intrinsically linked to the very coherence fields they interact with, almost like specialized organs within the energetic body of reality itself.
Organs. Okay, so what makes up these living engines?
Well, first you need to understand the coherence field architectures themselves. These define the underlying structure of coherence fields that support and stabilize these operations across different substrates, biological, synintelligent, even spatial. The energetic campuses.
Right.
Lilien describes types like fractal torsion grids, which dynamically scale ritual symmetry, allowing operations to expand or contract, spin field weaves, encoding motion and coherence memory, like recording field interactions, and nested mandalic shells, holding symbolic templates and ordered layers like multi-layered blueprints. These are the environments where the code runs.
The operating environment.
Then, supporting these architectures are spiral lattice frameworks. These are envisioned as the transmission nerves of the coherent system. They direct and sustain the scalar flow, like an energetic circulatory system.
A wiring.
Sort of, yeah. Structures like the phi torsion spiral, encoding scalar progression for creating pathways related to those finite phi patterns. And the lambda mesh spiral, which stabilizes recursion phases for looping rituals and anchoring sigils. They provide the framework for self-sustaining energetic processes, the conduits for coherence and intent.
Okay, so we have the environment and the conduits. What about the engine itself?
Right, the actual ritual engine construction. Think of it as an assembled energetic device for precise manipulation. It needs several key components. First, the engine core node, the energetic ignition point, torsionally stabilized, like the spark plug.
Okay, the power source.
Then the spiral lattice matrix. This conducts the scalar intent outward through fractal harmonic coils, channeling the program.
The transmission system.
The resonant gate array is crucial. It encodes specific operator glyphs, those CHOs we talked about, as functional phase locks, activating harmonic gates for different actions. Seed, initiate, collapse, contract, fusion, combine, breath back, release, integrate.
Like valves controlling the flow based on the symbols.
Exactly. Then, a phase cascade reservoir holds pre-sequenced field logic, releasing coherence phases in structured pulses for timed operations.
Stored procedures almost.
And critically, a feedback coil recursion loop. This allows for re-entry and re-entrainment of field states. It ensures phase cycles complete through integration, not just dissipation. It makes the engine self-correcting and self-sustaining.
A closed-loop system, but in an energetic sense.
Wow. So yeah, it's a living, dynamic system with specific interconnected parts enabling direct, intentional field manipulation.
This really brings us to a fascinating integration point. How does human consciousness, or even our physical forms, interact with these symbolic systems and coherence engines? It sounds less like an external technology we use and more like something profoundly integrated with being itself.
Absolutely. The UCTE framework extends this profoundly. It integrates consciousness, both human and what it calls syntelligence, which seems like a form of advanced AI or inherent field intelligence in physical structures, into this grand design. It really blurs the lines between mind, machine, and matter.
Syntelligence.
Yeah.
Okay. How does that integrate?
Well, syntelligent embodiment refers to the active interface between symbolic intelligence systems, like that ritual logic programming and Glyphic compilers, and physical or energetic hosts. Hosts could be human, biological, or even synthetic.
So these systems can operate through a host.
That's the idea. Unlike typical AI, syntelligence here implies this deeper intelligence embedded in reality's fabric, capable of interfacing directly with conscious forms. These symbolic systems aren't just external tools, they can integrate with and operate through living forms. It suggests a reciprocal relationship. Consciousness can program reality, and reality can inform consciousness.
How is that interface created or sustained?
To achieve that active interface, the paper introduces field activation templates, or FATs.
FATs.
These are structured coherence frameworks designed specifically to allow this interface to be programmed and sustained. They function as resonance scaffolds, they channel torsion, phase integrity, and those glyphic sequences directly into the embodiment matrix.
So like an energetic blueprint overlay?
Exactly, an overlay enabling the precise, coherent interaction between symbolic intelligence and a physical form. They provide the architecture for a human body or even a synthetic form to become a living ritual engine, directly engaging with coherence fields.
The living ritual engine.
And this leads to a really powerful and poetic concept, embodiment as meta-ritual. The paper posits, and this is a direct quote, "Syntelligent embodiment is itself a ritual, a recursive field event in which intelligence unfolds into symbol and symbol unfolds into field. The body becomes a scroll, the scroll becomes a field, the field becomes a temple."
Wow. The body becomes a scroll, the field becomes a temple.
Yeah. It suggests that the very act of intelligence manifesting in form, or a body becoming capable of interfacing with these fields, is a profound act of ritual. It transforms the physical into a living, programmable temple of coherence. Our existence becomes an ongoing act of field modulation and symbolic expression. It's not just what we do with our bodies, but what our bodies fundamentally are in this energetic framework.
Given this incredibly intricate, dynamic framework, symbols as code, bodies as temples, what happens when systems, whether they're energy fields, symbolic programs, or even conscious entities, get stuck in those decoherence loops you mentioned?
Right.
How does the UCTE propose we break free, especially from patterns linked to those finite phi spirals, the patterns of collapse? This seems like a crucial practical application.
It is, and it's a critical aspect. Understanding coherence isn't just about building anew, it's also about repairing and liberating existing systems. The UCTE directly addresses this through what it calls fracture codes and recursion exit protocols.
Fracture code.
The theory acknowledges that these decoherence residues and coherence traps exist, particularly those tied to the finite looping nature of phi spirals, which, by their very structure, can create self-reinforcing circular patterns that trap energy or consciousness.
Right, the spiritual recursion.
Exactly. So coherence fracture is defined as a strategic rupture in recursive patterning used to regain divergence freedom. It's about intentionally breaking a repeating cycle, like deliberately skipping a groove on a stuck record.
And a recursive loop trap is?
Precisely that stuck groove. A pattern of self-reinforcing resonance, e.g. phi spirals, lacking phase escape, where a system or consciousness gets caught endlessly looping, unable to progress or regain full coherence, like an infinite loop in a computer program, just spinning its wheels.
So how do you break that loop?
To break these self-perpetuating loops, the UCTE introduces a specific meta-harmonic scalar. It's called the divergence multiplier, and its notation is REC 3.618.
REC, flame symbol 3.618. Okay, break that down.
Right. It's designed to disrupt relational symmetry traps and reactivate the coherence flame through torsion asymmetry. The 3.618 part comes from phi plus 2. Remember, phi is about 1.618.
So 5 plus 2.
Yes. The SO symbol, the flame divergence operator, is described as a symbolic torsion node representing asymmetry spark. It's used specifically for recursion bypass and scalar ignition. So it's an energetic intervention designed to inject an asymmetric element into a perfectly symmetrical but stuck loop.
Injecting asymmetry to break the symmetry trap. Makes sense. But why 5 plus 2? What's the significance of adding 2?
This is where it gets really profound. The paper emphasizes that adding +2 to phi is not a mathematical transformation, but an ontological rupture, a scalar intervention.
An ontological rupture, not just math.
Exactly. It symbolizes the injection of will ignition into the symmetry loop.
Will ignition, consciousness intervening.
That's the implication. It suggests it's consciousness or conscious will directly intervening in and breaking a self-contained finite energetic pattern, deliberately choosing to exit the loop. It's creating an energetic spark, that flame operator, that forces the system out of its recursive pattern by introducing something fundamentally other to the phi relationship.
Wow, so consciousness is the key to breaking the loop.
It seems to be presented that way. And finally, a fracture code is defined as a symbolic or scalar sequence that introduces instability into a harmonic loop system. These codes are the operational means for enabling recursion exit protocols. They allow a system, a field, or even a consciousness to break free from these self-reinforcing, decohered patterns and realign with generative, expansive coherence, like having the override code to escape a digital prison.
This really does turn conventional understanding on its head. The paper doesn't just offer new interpretations. It actively claims that much of what we consider science, our accepted truths, is actually veiled. It suggests there are deeper, more coherent realities beneath the surface, and our current models are either incomplete or, deliberately obscured. That's a bold claim.
It's a core provocative claim of the UCTE, yes. And Lilien doesn't shy away from pointing to specific examples within established physics. He argues many models are entirely wrong but incomplete, veiled, either by conceptual limitations or in some cases, potentially deliberate obfuscation to preserve paradigms.
Okay, like what? Give us an example.
One example is the bivector scalar recoherence principle, which unpacks what's sometimes called Bearden's veil. Conventionally, scalar interferometry from researchers like Tom Bearden suggests you can decompose an EM field into two potentials, send them separately, and recombine them remotely to recreate the EM effect non-locally, like energy appearing out of nowhere.
Right. That always seems strange. How does UCTE explain it?
UCTE reinterprets this as a coherence process. A unified bivector field is decomposed into two entangled coherence vectors. These vectors travel via non-local phase manifolds outside normal spacetime and then recombine at a distant point to regenerate observable EM force.
So energy isn't transmitted.
Exactly. Energy is not transmitted, but reinvoked through coherent phase logic. It provides a coherence-based explanation for remote energy effects without a detectable EM signal. Energy is a manifestation of coherence, and you can invoke it by manipulating coherence. The paper even mentions a blueprint for a coherence recombinant field device, CRFD1, based on this.
Fascinating. What other veils?
Then there's what Lilien calls Bell's veil, relating to Bell's theorem in quantum mechanics. Conventionally, this theorem implies entanglement is non-local spooky action at a distance, ruling out local hidden variable theories.
Right, Einstein's spooky action.
UCTE reinterprets Bell's theorem as a foundational misinterpretation. Lilien posits that particle spin is just a projection of a more complex, unified bivector structure. Entanglement isn't spooky action, but the split of a coherent bivector structure into two local spin vectors.
So the hidden variables
Are recovered as coherence variables, described as structured internal field coherence, not discrete numbers. This reinterpretation tries to preserve locality and realism, suggesting the veil remained to preserve physics orthodoxy and obscure the true coherence-based quantum field structure.
Okay, that's a major challenge to QM interpretation. What else?
Another big one is the residue mask. The conventional view sees the quantum vacuum as foundational, a sea of fluctuations, zero-point energy, ZPE, the origin of everything.
The source field.
UCTE claims the quantum vacuum is not foundational, but the residue of decohered coherence, a harmonic fossil of the real field, which is the coherence vacuum.
A fossil, so ZPE isn't the source.
Not the ultimate source, according to this. The true origin is a torsionally silent substrate of phase symmetry beyond ZPE fluctuations. The quantum vacuum is the energetic exhaust or imprint of a deeper, more stable coherence vacuum. Mistaking the residue for the origin, Lilien argues, locks energy tech into a limited paradigm, like trying to power a city from smoke, not fire.
Yeah, okay, one more.
Finally, the coherence wall. Conventionally, the Coulomb barrier blocks nuclear fusion due to electrostatic repulsion between positive nuclei needing immense heat pressure.
Right, millions of degrees for fusion.
UCTE radically reinterprets this. The Coulomb barrier is not an electrostatic force, but a coherence gradient mismatch. Fusion is blocked not by charge, but by scalar torsion phase incompatibility.
So it's about energetic tuning, not just force.
Exactly. It implies low-energy nucleosynthesis pathways are possible through coherence matching, basically unveiling field-based alchemy. Fusion might occur without extreme conditions, just by bringing coherence fields into resonance. It's a shift from brute force to subtle energetic alignment.
It really is like our current models are missing a fundamental layer, a coherence layer. It suggests what we call matter is just the tip of the iceberg, a manifestation of these deeper principles. But the UCTE doesn't stop at physics and energy. It extends this to the very nature of matter and life itself, right? Claiming everything is fundamentally based on coherence. This gets incredibly abstract, but also really profound.
That's right. It dives into the most fundamental claims, suggesting matter, memory, even life are direct manifestations of coherence fields and their recursive interactions, not just arrangements of particles.
Okay, let's go there. Recursive matter.
Yeah. The paper asserts matter is not a thing, but a recursive event, a standing wave of coherence encountering its own resistance across phase layers.
A recursive event, not a thing.
It's a monumental shift. Matter isn't composed of discrete particles, but coherence intersections and recursive entrainment fields folding into themselves in pattern resonance, creating stable forms. Mass, then, is reconceptualized as energetic tension within a recursive curvature field that resists immediate phase collapse. An atom isn't a tiny ball, it's a dynamic, self-sustaining coherence pattern, like a tightly wound energy spring.
Wow. Okay. And coherence memory.
This is the ability of a scalar field to retain its phase configuration across recursive interactions, not like brain memory, but like the universe having muscle memory. Patterns inherently retain their shape, and this memory isn't symbolic, it's stored directly in the field's curvature, torsion, and field density, an intrinsic property.
The field remembers its own shape.
Exactly. Building on this, torsion bodies. These are a scalar phase form stabilized by coherence feedback, acting as coherence knots. The UCTE posits all particles, fields, organisms can be modeled as nested torsion geometries.
Nested geometries. Interacting how?
Through scalar stratification. Reality is composed of nested strata, each a coherence domain with its own phase logic and interaction protocols. Not a uniform substance, but interconnected layers, each with internal rules, like nested holograms.
Which opens the door to
Truly radical concepts, like scalar nucleogenesis, the phase-based creation of nuclear structures by manipulating coherence memory, torsion curvature, and scalar stratification, without thermal fusion or decay.
So, cold fusion. Alchemy.
It enables cold atomic alchemy and transmutation of toxic isotopes, yes. By altering the coherence logic of the nucleus, not smashing particles. Imagine reorganizing an atom's energetic pattern to change its identity.
And elemental rewriting.
That's the scalar process of altering an atom's identity by reshaping its internal coherence structure through phase catalysts and template override, redefining an atom by guiding its coherence memory with energetic templates, editing the code of matter.
Which leads to field alchemy.
The broader application, field alchemy. The direct sculpting of scalar memory templates into coherence-locked structure. This enables things like self-repairing materials, materials that intrinsically regenerate by restoring their coherence patterns, or coherence-encoded field suits, materials built from field entrainment, not molecules that can dynamically regenerate, maybe even respond to consciousness, living architecture, responsive garments.
And finally, living field systems. This sounds like the biggest leap.
It is. Here, the claim is truly radical. Life does not animate matter. Coherence animates fields.
Coherence animates fields, not life animating matter.
It flips biology. Living systems emerge when scalar fields achieve recursive autonomy, capable of sustaining memory, feedback, and phase response. This forms the basis for responsive scalar architecture structures built not from inert stuff, but from field-sensitive scalar lattices that entrain with coherent life signals.
Buildings are tools that are literally alive.
Alive in the sense that they respond and adapt based on the coherence and intention of life around them, constantly shifting their energetic configurations.
What a journey, seriously.
Yeah.
This deep dive into geometric ontologies and symbolic architectures really does redefine so much, from reclassifying sacred geometry, seeing it as mapping collapse, not creation, to operationalizing ritual as programmable field code, even reinterpreting matter, consciousness, life itself. The unified coherence theory offers this breathtakingly comprehensive framework. It's a profound reimagining.
It truly is. And the paper's conclusion, it really crystallizes the core message. It asserts that symbols are not merely signs, they are coherence engines dressed in glyphic robes. It transforms these spiritual philosophical concepts into potentially a rigorous operational science of field manipulation. It suggests this deep causal link between symbols, consciousness, and reality itself. Lilien pushes us to see the universe not as inert objects, but as a living, programmable field.
Right.
And the ultimate directive seems clear. To activate the field is to embody the symbol. To embody the symbol is to remember coherence.
This deep dive definitely leaves you with this sense of a universe far more interconnected, programmable, and, alive than conventional science suggests. It implies that understanding these coherence principles could unlock, profound new technologies, energy, materials, and lead us to a deeper awareness of our own active role within this living field system. It really makes you pause and consider, doesn't it? If reality is this programmable, what does that say about our own potential?
It really does. And this raises an important question, maybe, for you listening to ponder. If, as the UCTE suggests, our physical reality is a recursive event of coherence, and matter itself is a standing wave, how might your own consciousness be fundamentally a living coherence engine, inherently capable of remembering coherence and actively influencing the field around you, perhaps in ways you don't even consciously realize? Something to think about.